The Alpha program was born in England. It has proved to be a fine import, and I think that over 150 countries would agree with me. Shaila Visser is the National Director of Alpha Canada. She is visiting today from Vancouver, BC, and I know, Shaila, you're excited about the resurgence of Alpha in Canada. Eager to talk about that. But first of all, congratulations. This is a relatively new appointment.
Yes, thank you.
And we have a picture, I think, of your commissioning. This is kind of a candid shot, but laying on of hands and prayer. And was this expected? Did you see this coming?
Well, I've been working with Alpha International for a number of years, and in the fall of 2009, the board had decided that they would like to offer me the role, and I knew that all the experience I had internationally would bring to bear on the organization within Canada. So it was really a perfect fit.
Well, that picture is perfect for a chapter we just can't overlook. Before we talk about the program and what's happening, the fact that you're here is pretty impressive.
In March of this year, I was diagnosed with a life-threatening fungal infection called cryptococcal gattii. And when I went into the hospital, I'd had headaches, and they'd been progressively worse. And I finally said to my husband on a Saturday morning very early, I have to go to the hospital, something's really wrong. And we went into the hospital, and by later that afternoon, the doctor had come back to me and said, you have meningitis of some sort, or TB. So I was immediately put into isolation. A few days later, after being in isolation and having more tubes in me and drugs going in me, they came back with the diagnosis that I had a fungal meningitis. I didn't even know there was such thing as a fungal meningitis. I thought viral, bacterial, didn't realize fungal. And when they came in to give us the news, my husband and I, my mother was there, it was very sobering. They said, this is life-threatening. You have a growth on your brain, a fungal ball at the base of my brain, and you need to know that the drugs that we have to give you for this, called amphotericin B, they call it amphoterrible B in the hospital because it's so awful. And it's so injurious to your kidneys and potentially your liver that you could lose that one of those organs just from taking the drug that fights the fungal meningitis. So you can well imagine that my poor husband was beside himself, my family, my friends, and they said, you will be in the hospital for 8 weeks.
Did they tell you then that 1 in 4 die with this diagnosis?
Yes.
They did.
They told my husband and my mother. The doctor was so very serious with me that I realized, oh my goodness, like this is my life that's flashing before my eyes. And when you're lying in a hospital room and you've been given a very grave diagnosis, a lot of things go through your mind at that moment, including what do I believe about God? Where is he right now? What about my poor husband who looks like he's falling apart? Where do you go with that? And because you're just lying there on a lot of medications, it's not like you can keep yourself busy or occupied. You really are left alone with your own thoughts and prayers.
Were you in a lot of pain? Could you think clearly?
I was in extraordinary pain because my brain had swollen, and so because of that, there were days where no one could even touch me or touch my bed because any movement just sent pain through my head. So I would have ice, I'd have morphine. They had to put a line in so that they could keep me on drugs and on fluid. They had to put a line in, they call it a PICC line, through my arm here into the top of my heart so that any drugs they gave me went right into the system, into the blood pool there. I mean, to me, well, you know how the medical system is. When people say you have to be in hospital for 8 weeks, you know it's serious. You know it's serious, and the doctor kept saying it's going to be an up and down recovery.
What's scary about this is that it was in the environment. Did you just breathe it in?
That's what they say. The research that they have right now say that you can get fungal meningitis from just breathing it in on the West Coast. It started on Vancouver Island, but it has migrated over to the Lower Mainland, and in fact, last year they had their first case in Portland, so it's moving south. And it lives in trees that are found on the West Coast. And so whether I got it from a trip to the island or whether I was just breathing it in, walking around Vancouver, they can't determine that. But something happened, and it went through my respiratory system, and then it attacks your brain.
Shaila, you represent people finding the truest truths in God himself and life to the full in him. What did this journey do in your faith experience?
In the first 2 days when I got my diagnosis, it was all about me. Like, truthfully, it was all about me, my family. Oh my goodness, what does this mean? And I remember very late at night when I had had a good crying fit over it, and the nurses had calmed me down, I said to Jesus, is this it? Is this it? Should I be preparing to die? And I really felt in my spirit and my mind that he said no. And then 2 days later, after I'd been grumpy about being in a communal room with 4 other roommates coming and going, I thought to myself, you know what, I have a choice here. I can make this hospital stay all about me, or I can make it all about God and what he wants for me in this place. And I felt the conviction of the Spirit saying that, and the rest of my time in there, I say to my friends, it was my best ministry time. Wow. Now, my husband isn't quite there yet. You know, it was very traumatic for him. But for me, I saw the opportunity to meet people who were ill, who were lonely, who were afraid. I was able to pray with people. I was able to encourage people. I wanted to be to both the staff and the guests in my room, I wanted to be the light of Christ to them.
You must have ceased to be contagious.
Yeah, I was not contagious after the fungal meningitis diagnosis, so that's why I ended up in a room with other hospital patients.
Something makes this profound as well, and that's the tie to the first picture. You had people praying all around the globe for you.
All around the world. Because of my role with Alpha, I know people in countries all over the world through networks, through our churches that are involved with Alpha Canada. I mean, I still meet people that will say to me, oh, I'm so glad to see you. I'm so glad you're alive because we prayed for you. I've never met these people. I cannot tell you how humbling it is for Ryan, my husband, and I to really be aware that God has answered the prayers of his people right around the world. We would send out an email saying, you know, at 3:30 in the morning is when I wake up with a blistering headache because they administer the worst drugs at night right before you go to sleep. And they give you sleep aids to try and help you sleep off the side effects. And at 3:30 I'd wake up with a blistering headache. Well, my friends over at Holy Trinity Brompton in London, the UK, the church that birthed Alpha, they said, we'll pray for you because we're awake at that time of day.
7 hours later.
We'll pray for you at 3:30. And do you know, it worked. God answered that prayer, and the pain started shifting to 4:30, then to 5:30, and then it dissipated altogether. It was remarkable. It is very rare in my life that I've seen prayer request, answer, prayer request, answer. Usually it's prayer request, what's the answer? Where are you leading, Lord? But this was one of the rare times that I felt like God was responding very directly and very quickly to the prayers of his people right around the world.
The fungal ball disappeared?
I had, on Good Friday this year in 2011, I had my pastor come in and pray for us and give us communion because we hadn't been in church in weeks. We'd been in the hospital for about 5 weeks at that point. And he prayed for us and he said, you know, I really believe we need to pray for a miracle today. We need to pray for an Easter weekend miracle. And on the Tuesday, I was going for a scheduled MRI. I'd been slowly getting better, and the doctor wanted to see how much better was I, what was happening with that fungal ball. Tuesday, I went in, and right before they're about to roll me in for the MRI, I thought, God, is there going to be anything there? Are you going to heal me? And then I thought, oh, that's crazy. Modern medicine, Western medicine, it's going to work. I'm on the healing path. God's already answered so many of our prayers. The next morning, my doctor came to see me. And he said, have you heard the news? I said, no, we haven't heard anything from the MRI. He said, it's gone. It's not there. We can't find it.
No scar tissue even?
Not even scar tissue, which is typically left after the drugs have effectively gotten rid of the fungal ball. There's a scar left. Nothing. He was amazed. Ryan and I were overjoyed. And then he said, you can go home today. And rather than 8 weeks in the hospital, 5.5 weeks after I entered the hospital, I went home rejoicing that the Lord had healed me. And you know, as I have often prayed for people to be healed, but it is a far different experience to be the recipient of the healing. It is humbling, it is life-altering. It's just still rattling through my body that God did this.
Are you okay?
I feel good. I have to be on drugs for 2 years.
Okay.
That get me a little bit more tired more quickly than I'm used to. But I'm just moving from strength to strength to strength.
You look fabulous.
I feel good.
And you are a woman on a mission, and it's such an exciting time for Alpha. It got a little quiet with Alpha in Canada. That's not the story today.
No, we have seen a resurgence of Alpha, and it's been thrilling. You know, I love to see people wrestle with the person of Jesus and investigate their own spiritual life. And Alpha provides the platform to do that. Alpha is run in a local church or by a local church. And typically the churches run a classic Alpha, in an evening, dinner, a talk, and a small group discussion.
15-week
It could be 15 sessions over 10 weeks. We also have a new, younger version of Alpha that was designed for university students, but lots of churches use it. It's 7 weeks, 30 minutes, multimedia. A young man by the name of Jamie Haith on it. So churches feel like, okay, we don't just have to run classic Alpha over these number of weeks, 15 sessions, but rather we can use Jamie Haith's talks, 7 weeks, multimedia designed for a younger generation, and we can take this out. I think that's been the biggest change.
Getting outside the church walls.
It is, it's getting outside the church walls, and we say rather than inviting people in all the time, what if we were to go and tell? And so part of that is taking Alpha into restaurants and cafes and pubs, taking it into your workplace. You know, we've seen Alpha grow in extraordinary ways this year. 20% more courses are running across the country, which means thousands more Canadians are coming on a course to investigate their own spiritual life.
Well, I think the times we are living in, a whole world shaking, has people asking, what in the world is going on? You brought a video that I think addresses the evidence of eternity in our hearts. Watch this. How many people have done this course in its history since, what, 95 in Canada, but it was born in England in what year?
17 million people have done the course since 1991.
91.
But it really accelerated in the late 90s and in Canada through the late 90s and early 2000.
And you have an amazing goal for Alpha International.
Yes, Nikki Gumbel said to our staff worldwide a couple years ago, by the end of 2020, his vision is that 100 million people would go on the Alpha course. And it's been remarkable because we think, how on earth will that happen? There's not enough Alpha staff anywhere in the world to train that many churches to run Alpha. But what's happening is churches are taking their Alpha experience, taking 6 people from their church and going overseas and training other churches how to run Alpha.
Fantastic.
I in fact went on a trip to India doing just that.
We have a picture of you looking very culturally appropriately dressed here.
Yes, and that's with Raj of Alpha India. You know, Alpha in India has taken off. Last year, in 2010, which is the last stats we had, 156,000 people were baptized after taking an Alpha course in India. It's just growing and growing.
Well, I think part of the appeal, in many cases, is the meal. Maybe the biggest appeal, though, is the freedom to ask your questions about the meaning of life.
It's for anyone, and we welcome anyone regardless of background, regardless of race or religious persuasion. We want anyone to come on an Alpha course because we think it's a safe place for them to discuss the most important questions of life.
Shaila, thank you for this update and for sharing this amazing testimony. We're just very glad you're here.
I am very glad too.
And if you'd like to know more about Alpha right here in Canada, it's simply alphacanada.org. And because we're seen globally, What's the main address?
Alpha.org. It doesn't matter what country you're in, alpha.org will get you to your national Alpha office.
And an Alpha somewhere near you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Mara.
We'll be right back.